evening. It's Monica from Life is Art, and it's Wednesday. Let's create. We are going to be creating this evening with the Say It with Style special. We're going to be looking at the plaid stencil and also the You Go Girl stamp set. And so this is a special that's available on the website right now, and it is for National Stamping Month. And there are 4 different stamp sets available, 2 different stencils, and also a bunch of workshop kits, 4 different workshop kits. Of course, you can buy them as a bundle if you like, or individually, or the individual pieces to create with this Say It With Style collection. So we're going to be using that. We're also going to be using the Plaid Cardfront stencils. And, oops, I got an extra piece of paper there. And so we're going to be using these diagonal striped stencils to create an interesting card front today. We're going to be using the standard card size, but in the stencil pack you get the standard as well as the slimline, which is awesome. So you have choices about what you want to create. The slimlines are also great because you can use those as a nice border on a layout. So lots of versatility there. So we're going to start out with a piece of white daisy. Let me just grab my paper here. And I buried my piece of white daisy. I might have to cut another one. So we want a piece that is, let me grab my paper trimmer. Woo! Hitting everything. Okay, honking big paper trimmer. We're going to start out with a 4 1/4. We are going to hold our stencil onto our cardstock. And so I'm just going to take a couple little strips of washi tape, and I'm going to attach them to the short ends of my piece of cardstock. And I like to use this trick when I'm using stencils and I'm going to be adding different stencils one on top of the other over time. And so that gives us the versatility. We can mix and match, put the stencils on, take the stencils off. I know a lot of people use sprays and different adhesives to hold their stencils down to their paper, but I find just a little bit of washi tape stuck to the back side with the sticky side up helps to hold my stencils quite nicely. I'm also going to bring in my all-purpose mat, so I'm going to scooch that out of the way and protect my work surface because we're going to be doing stenciling, so it will get messy. We like getting messy sometimes, don't we? And we're going to start out with the stripe that's the largest first. And so here on my one stencil, it's a wide band. And I never measured it to see how wide this stripe is. But what I want to do is to line it up with my paper, however I want it to sit on there. And that looks pretty good. Just kind of center it on there. And then I'm just going to push down on the part of the stencil that's touching that washi tape. And that will hold my stencil in place while I do my inking. Now I'm also going to bring in my handy dandy little drawer liner. That will hold my... words have failed me. That will hold my ink in place while I do some inking. Now I'm going to start out with Journey ink, and of course my ink has no label on it, but that's okay. It's Journey ink. And I'm going to be using a blending brush for this. I really like using the blending brushes for the stenciling. Hey Ellie, nice to see you're watching. If you're joining me live, you can just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. And if you're watching later on replay, you can just say replay. So we are going to be adding some Journey ink. And I have found that the easiest way to add the ink with these particular stencils is not necessarily to like go in a circle, although that does work. I find if I just get some ink on there. Touch the solid part of the stencil first, just so there's no harsh anything happening. Kind of taps a little bit off. And then just go along it like this. I find that this does a nice quick job of getting ink on the stencil, and I'm just following the stripe of what's already there. Okay, we can lay down some nice journey color. So you can see how wide that first little bit of this stencil is. And then we're going to go ahead, we can go side to side if we want, or just go along the length like this. And add some ink to our stencil. And you want to pay attention when you're doing this kind of stenciling where it's going to kind of layer up. You want to make sure that you're kind of keeping the same amount of inking happening in both places. So whatever you add to one, you add to another. It's a bit like math, right? Left side equals right side. If you've ever done algebra, what you do to one side, you do to another. So what we do to one stripe, we're going to do to another. Just get our ink on there. This is a nice little calisthenic workout for our arms. So this is what you do on arm day. I've got a swivelly chair, so it's kind of swiveling around on me as I work away here. And just lay our ink down. Then we're going to go to our last little stripe here in the corner. And add our ink. Beautiful. Okay, now we can remove this stencil, and that washi tape will stay right there because we've attached it to the back of our cardstock, so we can use it for the next layer. I'm going to just give my all-purpose mat a little bit of a spray with some water here, and just clean up that ink that kind of deposits itself around the edges of where you're working. Just a little spritz with the water, and then wipe it up. And that's how lovely and easy it is to clean off your all-purpose mat. Then, now that that's dry, we can bring our stencil back in, and we're going to switch to the other piece of the stencil. And this one has got some smaller stripes that go in between those larger stripes. Now here's where you have to line it up again and make sure that everything's where you want it. And then you can go ahead and just stick it down into that washi tape that's still there. Make sure everything's in place, looking good. And we're going to switch colors. And that's the fun thing about having these stencils that are in different parts, is that you can switch colors. So I'm going to switch to Limeade. I'm going to grab my other blending brush for this. I have one that I use for greens. We're going to ink that up. And we're going to go through the same process. We're going to add some green onto these smaller stripes. Just back and forth, back and forth. And laying down the color. The other reason why kind of going in this lengthwise fashion is good. I don't notice it as much with the large stripes, but if you're a little too rough when you're going around in circles, you could flick up some of these smaller pieces, and then they kind of shift around. So going the length of them actually keeps you from doing that too much. So we'll just add our ink all down there. Oops. I did it there too. Just got to be careful. Looking good. I love this combination of the Journey and the Limeade. I think it's a really nice combination. A lot of the new colors that we have work really well together. The Rosy, the Journey, the Limeade, the Jade, the Pumpkin, Acorn. Which one did I miss? The Royal. They all look really nice together, I find. So, gotta get a chance to play with those new colors. And if you didn't notice the posting earlier today, a lot of them are back in stock again. Yay! They were on their way. So now we can go ahead and remove this stencil. And if you wanted to leave it like this, you certainly could. It's a lovely diagonal stripe, but we're going to take it a step further. So let me go ahead, scooch this out of the way. We're going to do a little bit of cleanup here on the Versa mat, or the all-purpose mat, I mean. And also our stencils now. I'm just trying to remember which side of this it was that I inked. So we'll clean one side, and then we'll clean the other, because I think it was actually the other side. I like how easy these are to clean up. You could use your stamp chamois for this too, but I didn't get it wet before we started. Got a little piece of tissue on there. You want to make sure that your stencils are not only clean, but also dry before you put it back onto your card front, because if there is any moisture on your stencil, then that is going to cause the ink that you've already put down to try to run away. We don't want that. No running away ink. So let's spritz this one and give it a wipe off. And this is how you quite often end up being inky when you're crafting, is because you're always playing with ink. Another little squirt there. But it's definitely good to clean as you go. And because we're going to be trading, sides with our stencils. We're going to flip them over and use the opposite side. So we need to make sure that it's clean and dry. So I think we're doing pretty good here. Looking good. Okay. Let's bring this back in. Let's bring in our card front. Now we want to, so we had our stencil, let me see, we had it this way, going diagonal. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip it horizontally so that we line up going perpendicular, that's the mathematical term, to our first design. So now we're going to create the crisscross of our plaid. And we can use that same washi tape to stick it down like so. And then let's bring back in our journey so we can do journey on these wider stripes again. And I'm actually going to turn my my paper so that it's a little bit easier for me to do the inking. And again, we're just going to start, but this time I'm going to do it a little bit lighter. I want to have a little bit of variation in the intensity of the ink. And so I'm going to do this run through a little bit lighter than the first. And that's another thing you can do. You can use the same color over and over again, just with a variety of intensities of ink. And that will create an entirely different look, but very cool. And then our last little stripe here. Like so. Make sure I got into the corners there. And then we can take this one off. So you may have heard this kind of stencil being referred to as a layering stencil. And that's because we just keep putting on layers. Layers and layers. Okay, let's clean this off. Otherwise we'll be picking up color that we don't want on the next layer. There we go. And I always have to remind myself, put this away and trade the brush, because quite often I get engrossed in what I'm doing and I forget to grab a new brush. And then I end up with two colors trying to mix on one brush. And it doesn't really work out well that way. Nope, that's not how you want to do it. Okay. Now I'm just looking, okay, that one we've done. We're going for the small stripes this time. And again, we're going from the different angle. So all we had to do was flip it over horizontally. Just going to get my washi tape in place. And so we were this way before, whoops, upside down, this way. And now we're going to just flip it horizontally and stick it on our front. I'm having a hard time seeing the stencil with the bright lights above me. Whew, the washi tape. It's good and sticky. Okay, so we're going to line up our stencil like so and stick it to the tape. There we are. And again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it a little bit so that I'm going across with the pattern. And again, I'm going to do this a little bit lighter than the first go around. And then you're going to get to see the reveal. Oops, let's hold on to that. Don't want to get too exuberant. There we go. And you could use any combination of colors with your stencils. That's one thing I like about this. You're basically making your own custom paper. And so, you know, you can mix and match any color combination to suit whatever you want to do. A little bit more of the Limeade on there and there. And then this last little corner, I'm going to turn it around and just get in that last corner. And we are done with our stencil. Let's move that out of the way. We will spray our mat. I find that Limeade is hard to see, so unless you clean it up right quick, you won't remember that it's there. And I will clean off those stencils once we're all done. Let me take that off. Take off the washi tape, and then I will let you see one piece of washi tape, two, and I didn't de-stickify my washi tape because I wanted it to hold my stencils. And so there we go. That is our created plaid. How cool is that? Hey, Mom, nice to see you're watching. I think that that turns out and looks so cool. So let's scooch that all-purpose mat out of the way. Our messy mat. And it's best stored rolled up. I just roll it up and put it on my shelf. Okay, now I want to trim a little bit off the edges of my piece of paper. So I'm going to trim it down, of course, bringing in my honkin' big paper trimmer. And I cut it originally to 4 1/4, but I want it to be 4 inches. So I'm going to take 1/8 of an inch off each side. And the good thing about doing it that way is if by some chance, like right here, my stencil was a little bit off where the edge is, it doesn't matter because I'm going to trim it off anyway. Okay. And then this way we were not quite 5 1/2. So we're going to trim a little smidge there. The other thing that this does is it gets rid of the harsh edge on the outside edge, and it makes it look more like pattern paper, like the pattern just continues and it doesn't just stop right on the edge. So there we go. Trim that off. Ta-da! Okay. Now what I want to do is I would want to add a piece of some black cardstock on here. These are kind of nice, bright, fun colors, and I'm going to tone it down by adding some deep, dark color to it. And in this instance, I'm going to use black. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some adhesive to this, like so. That's a piece that came off with the washi tape, so we'll just remove it so it doesn't dangle where it shouldn't. And this black I cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So it's 1/8 of an inch less than a standard card size. And then, you know what? I'm going to have a hard time centering that because I can't see the edge. Let me just do that. That's a good tip to know. When you're trying to center on something that's dark and you've got that dark Versamat behind, it's a little bit easier sometimes if you put something lighter colored behind there. But this is our card base. So we're going to fold it with the bump score line to the inside. And then we're going to attach this onto our card base. Easy peasy. Just like so. take our backing off. If you were making multiples of these cards, I wouldn't even worry about, switching back and forth with inks. I would do all the same color all at the same time and then wash. And then do the other color and then wash. Kind of assembly line it. But when you're just doing a one-off, then you need to wash in between. There we go. Doesn't that look lovely? I like how that black just adds a nice little border around the edge. So pretty. Okay, now we're going to bring in that stamp set from the Say It With Style special, the You Go Girl. This was my favorite one out of the collection. And I like all the sentiments on here. Sending you some good vibes. You've totally got this. You go, girl. Darling. Awesome. You are all kinds of amazing. You are a whole lot of awesome. And I think those are lovely sentiments. So we're going to use this You've Totally Got This sentiment. And I've got it loaded up on my stamp platform. Because when I'm doing a sentiment, I like to know that the sentiment is going to come out the way I want it. So I've just got a little piece of white daisy here, and I'm going to go ahead and ink this up using the Jade ink. So it's a little bit darker than the Limeade, and this color combination was sort of a card making by committee this afternoon when we were doing our Let's Craft or We Craft Wednesdays. And so I was asking the people who were on, I think it was Mom and Deborah, and I forget who else was on at the time. Maybe Allison. And they were giving me the suggestions. So they thought that the Jade would be a nice color for the sentiment. So I'm going to just ink it up there and close it. And then I can ink it again, because inevitably I will have missed inking a part of it. And go again. That looks good. I'm going to set that aside. And we're going to get to do some fun stuff. We are going to do some fussy cutting. But I also want to bring in a piece of black cardstock. Is this going to be big enough? We'll see. It might not be. I might have to get a different piece. I thought I had a piece cut, but my pieces have gone AWOL over the course of the afternoon. You know how it is. All right, we're going to fussy cut this. Now, this card stamp set does come with thin cuts, okay? And so you can purchase the thin cuts if you want. I decided I was going to fussy cut. That actually looks kind of cool the way it is, but that's not how we're going to leave it. Yeah, no worries. We're going to go ahead and fussy cut around this and leave a little halo of white around our inked areas. Go in and out a little bit. If you are going to fussy cut this, you can look at the stamp carrier sheet, because the carrier sheet actually has the lines marked on it where the die cut would cut it. So it'll give you an indication of where might be a good spot to trim around the edge and how much detail they used. And so I took a peek at it, but I'm just kind of winging it. We're going to go around the apostrophe here and around the letters like so. Around, and I'm getting too much of a tail, so we're just going to snip to the edge on that one. And around. The best thing to do when you're fussy cutting is to pivot your paper. That allows you to kind of get around all the little nooks and crannies. And there we go. I'm just going to curve that a little bit, and there was some other spot right there where I need to just trim it off a smidge. You've totally got this. All right, let's see. Yes, that will fit. Excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get ourselves a piece of this black cardstock. And I want to do a second layer of fussy cutting because I know, crazy. But I want to be able to pop this up a little bit. So I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of adhesive in the center and then stick it down to my cardstock like so. And that makes it much easier to fussy cut around the layer. Now, I could have put the foam tape on and stuck it on there, but my tip is to stick it down temporarily and then add the foam tape later, because it'll be much easier to determine the edge when they're tight together than when one is popped up on top. And inevitably, if you try to hold it by hand, which I have done, it shifts. It just will. So you might as well just avoid the aggravation and just put a little piece of adhesive, and as long as you stick to the center of your image, it won't affect anything that will be visible in the end. And we'll just go all the way around. When you start getting into like a second and third layer of fussy cutting like this, you're not going to see as much detail. It's just kind of getting the general gist of things, because the farther away you get from the image, the less exact it is. All right. Because we're fussy cutting on top of fussy cutting, not just fussy cutting on top of stamping, if you know what I mean. All right, and then we can peel this back off and add some foam tape to the back, like so. All the way around. I'm adding a lot of foam tape to this one. There we go. And then we're going to do that same trick where we bring in a lighter piece of paper so we can see what we're doing. And just remove the backing on here. Does anybody else do that trick where they put a lighter piece of paper under when you're trying to work with a dark piece of paper? I guarantee it will make things easier. And then just line it up and stick it down. There we go. You've totally got this. Then let's bring in our card base, and remember that we want it to open this way. Add our adhesive on the back here. Like so. Now, this does take a little bit more time than doing just pieces of pattern paper and cardstock, because you had to create the pattern. However, it is not a very lengthy process, so it's not going to take you days and days to make that lovely plaid. Laura, yeah, you do that technique too, where you add the light paper. It really, really helps. Now, for a little bit of embellishment, we're going to use some of these Journey sequins to match that color that we've got going on in our plaid. So let's get ourselves a selection. We've got our pickup tool, we've got our liquid glue, and let's add a couple dots of glue. I find with sequins and things it's easier just to put a dab of glue onto the card base and then add the sequins to it. There we go. So let's find what we want. Let's grab this guy and maybe this guy. Stick them down. And then let's add a few more. We're going to do maybe 5 sequins on here. There. There. And there. Does anybody hear music? My son is practicing my daughter's saxophone right now. He's playing "Oh Canada," but he's in the shop. So hopefully it's not too loud. And let's grab another one. I like that there's a variation in the color of these sequins. There's some that are really shiny, some that are kind of brushed, some that are sort of more an opaque matte, and a little bit lighter. And then there's also these creamy white ones. And I think that is super fun. And there we go. We've got our completed, stenciled, Say It With style backdrop for this card created with the Journey and the Limeade and that plaid stencil. And then we layered it up with some black cardstock on our white card base to create a nice little edge on there. And then stamping the sentiment in the darker Jade color. Fussy cutting it out, adding a layer of black to just make it pop off the center of the card, and then also adding in those sequins. Laura, this tool is called the pickup tool, and it's very flexible. It's basically a stick of wax, and you just sharpen it with a hand sharpener. Don't put it in an electric sharpener, or just be like me and use an X-Acto knife. And then all you do is just pick up your sequins like that. It's also very good. You know, I think it would probably last a lifetime, but they come in a pack of 2, so you can share them with a friend. But the other thing they're good for, and this is lazy me talking, is that if you take this and you've dropped a little piece of paper on the floor, say you've just die cut something and it falls on the floor, you can use this as an arm extension and pick your little piece of paper up off the floor with it, so that you don't lose it. So if you drop, maybe not this large of a piece of paper, but we'll see. No, that might be too much. But any little scrap of paper that falls on the floor, I'll pick it up like that. So it's called the pickup tool, and it works really well. So I hope you enjoyed seeing that Say It With style, plaid, stenciled card come together. It wasn't a fun fold or a fancy fold of any kind, but an interesting technique using those layering plaid stencils. And you can also get the layering quadrant stencils, which we used during the crop. So I'll be posting all of the crop videos and things on the Life is Art Facebook page probably this evening. So you'll be able to see those and on the YouTube channel, because I've uploaded them there as well. All right, I hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday evening, and we will see you again soon. Toodaloo. Bye.